Alex and I had been friends since childhood. We went to school together, experienced our first disappointments, and celebrated our first victories. As we turned 25, we began to dream of one thing, a big adventure. Alex and I often talked about how it was time to see the world. Everything kept getting postponed. First work, then family, but eventually we found the time and picked a destination, a secluded island on the other side of the world. It was far from civilization, with turquoise waters and pristine beaches. We bought tickets, booked a cottage by the ocean, and it seemed like nothing could go wrong. But just a few days before the trip, strange things began happening which I didn't take seriously at the time. A few days before our departure, I started noticing odd little things. First, I received several calls from unknown numbers, and every time I answered, there was silence on the other end. I attributed this to normal system glitches, but deep down, something began to disturb me. One night, I had a strange dream. In it, Alex was standing on a deserted beach, and the ocean was black as tar. I approached him, calling his name, but he wouldn't turn around. I yelled over and over, but he just stood there motionless. When I finally touched his shoulder, he turned and his eyes were empty, lifeless. I woke up in a cold sweat. That dream lingered in my mind, and I couldn't shake off the oppressive feeling that something was wrong. During the day, Alex came over and we discussed our upcoming vacation again. I didn't tell him about the dream. I didn't want to sound foolish, but the sense of unease wouldn't leave me. Alex was in great spirits, joking and expressing how much he was looking forward to the trip. At that moment, I decided that it was just pre-vacation nerves. The next morning, I was hit by another unsettling event. I woke up with sharp pain in my abdomen. It felt like a sharp needle pierced me every time I tried to get out of bed. The doctor said I had appendicitis. I could forget about the trip. The operation went well, but I was strictly forbidden to fly. Alex was disappointed but didn't cancel his trip. He joked that he would come back and show me 1,000 photos. We said our goodbyes, and I saw him off to the airport. At that moment, I didn't know I was seeing him for the last time. Alex flew away, and I was left to recover from surgery. A few days went by, and everything was calm until I noticed he hadn't been in touch. At first, I thought it was normal. He was relaxing and enjoying nature, but soon I started to worry. We usually stayed in touch, especially during trips. I tried calling, but his phone was out of service. I began sending him messages, but they remained unread. A week passed, and there was still no news from Alex. I called the travel agency where we had booked the cottage, but they said Alex had never shown up. My worry turned into panic. I tried contacting the police, but they told me there was nothing they could do without proof that something was wrong. With each passing day, my anxiety grew. What could have happened to Alex? Why hadn't he shown up on the island? Why hadn't he contacted anyone? These questions drove me crazy. I tried to find answers, but nothing worked. My mind started racing with the most horrific scenarios. Maybe he had an accident on the way. Maybe he was kidnapped. What weighed on me the most was the strange feeling that my illness, this case of appendicitis, somehow saved my life. As if some force didn't want me to go on this trip. And the more I thought about it, the more real that thought seemed. The dreams grew worse. Alex appeared to me again, standing on the black shore with empty eyes. Sometimes he called my name. His voice was soft, almost drowned out by the sound of the waves, but I heard every word. "You should have gone," he whispered, and there was reproach in his voice. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I contacted private detectives and decided to go to the island myself to find out what had happened. It was the longest flight of my life. I couldn't calm down. My thoughts raced one after another. I expected the worst, but when I landed, it turned out that no one knew about my friend, at least officially. Tourists spoke of a man who had left the cottage several days ago and disappeared into the jungle. But there were no traces, no reports. It was as if Alex had simply evaporated. I wandered around the island for days trying to find any sign of him. The locals just shrugged their shoulders when I asked about him. Everything seemed to indicate that Alex never existed at all. However, on the 4th day of searching, I stumbled upon an old fisherman's hut at the edge of the forest. Inside, it was dark and damp, but in the corner lay something that filled me with cold terror. It was our shared photograph taken just days before the trip. On the back was a short but sinister note. You should have gone instead of him. I left the island without ever finding him. Years passed, but I still don't know what happened to Alex. I know one thing. If I had gone on that trip, I would not have come back.